Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to Main Street Swim with Jim. This is Jim Ludwig from Main Street Financial Planning, and today we're excited to have one of our longtime friends and colleagues, Buz Livingston from Livingston Financial in Florida and on the border with Georgia. Good morning, Buz.
Good morning, Jim. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. We're glad to have you on Swim with Jim this morning, and our topic for this month is year-end planning. And one of the most important things that I think about coming from California, where we have a few disasters, is disaster planning. Now, you live in Florida. What kinds of potential disasters await your clients, and what do you tell them?
Jim, the first thing that we really think about, we remind everybody that to not ignore the tourist season. It can be a disaster. So we have to, that's kind of a joke to start everything off. Everybody knows about the hurricanes that, Florida has Florida doesn't have a hurricane problem. We have a geography problem. So we're in a place where we can, we just have a lot of hurricanes, and you just have to plan for it. And there are a lot of things that we do. The Florida Department of Emergency Management has a pretty good program where a business owner or an individual family member can build a plan. It's about a 4-page plan that goes down to it gives a kind of a checklist of the things that you need as far as supplies, and then also things that perhaps you're not, dog food and stuff, planning for pets and things like that. So you're a planner. I'm a planner, so you actually have a written plan. I've written a newspaper column for several years. I'm still kind of I have my foot back in the old the old technology, if you will. And usually when hurricane season comes around, I trot out my Trying to Reason with Hurricane Season column. And I dress it up a little bit. That's actually that's actually a title of an obscure Jimmy Buffett song. So and really, just tell people to think, plan ahead of time before the hurricane gets here. I'm in my 60s, and you can plan a lot better now with the newer technology. You can really follow hurricanes a lot closer, so you can plan better. But you still have to the time to plan for hurricanes is before they get there. It's as far as if you really don't. There's one thing that I think that people need to realize. You see these things where people evacuate for a hurricane, and there's one thing that you really want to think about is you really want to hide from the wind, but run from the water. The water is what kills people. The wind is deadly, of course, but more people drown. And you really need to know, is your house going to flood? Where are you in a flood zone? If you do evacuate, there's a little tip that I found out. You don't know if you might evacuate, and you come back and the electricity is still on, but you don't know how long the electricity was off. One thing that I just reminded people to do is, if you do evacuate, take a frozen cup of water, put it in your freezer, and put a quarter on top. Okay, if the electricity goes off and the water and the ice melts, if it comes back on and it's frozen, and if your quarter's not on top of the ice, you'll know that the power was off for a long time, and you probably ought to throw everything in your refrigerator out.
Would you throw the quarter out too?
Do what?
Would you throw the quarter out also?
I wouldn't, but some people might. But,
this little joke there.
I know. Do you want me to go on and talk some more about things that we have? Okay. A lot of people don't realize, particularly if they move to Florida, they don't realize how hurricane deductibles work. You actually have a higher. You grew up in the insurance industry.
Yeah.
And you can have a 10% hurricane deductible. that is, and then a lot of people, of course, don't realize that, a lot of the insurance policies, might be actual cash value as opposed to replacement cost. And so they're, I think the insurance company gypped me. Well, you just need to make some plan. You need to be aware that your coverage, the limitations of your coverage. Flood insurance, for instance, only goes up to $250,000. Again, it's actual cash value, so that a home that's older may be depreciated, and those are some of the things that I think that people need to really think about. And another thing, and I say this because I got it from an insurance adjuster out in 2004, 2005, and he said he told us it was at a financial planning association meeting in Pensacola, and I'll never forget it. And he said he'd been in this business, insurance company as an adjuster for decades, and he was getting out of it because of the way the companies had changed. There used to be if you had a claim, there would probably be a high end and a low end, and the insurance companies often would come back with a proposal or an offer somewhere in the middle, middle to high. And he said now it's almost, and this is from an insurance adjuster, it was the insurance companies tend to, I hate to say lowball, but they're just more aggressive in how they respond to claims. I've had there are some. I had a client. It wasn't a disaster. It just it was for them. But they ended up having to use an insurance, a private adjust. They had to hire their own adjuster.
Correct.
So that's what you may want to think about. And I usually, touch, the good thing about mass communication, about, email blast and Facebook and things like that is you can reach out to clients and, let them know what we advise them on, even if as a general advice.
Well, you mentioned something a little bit earlier about having to evacuate. Have you ever dealt with the concept of a grab and go bag or box?
That's a wonderful idea, and I don't have one myself, but I think it's for people. I don't evacuate. I mean, I live on the top of a hill. I went to Colorado last year, and in Fort Collins, Colorado, the bike that I rode on you couldn't ride it up my hill because you needed to, it was a beach cruiser bike. It's a so I'm not in but I've got a room that's, but I think it does make sense. And that's something that people ought to think about. And then, if you're going to do that, you need to start making a list for that bag right now, rather than waiting until, waiting until 24, until you get an evacuation notice.
Well, the people in Northern California and wine country found that out rather quickly as fire came through and wiped out 5,500 homes. Do you have any fire danger there in Florida?
Well, there's another thing. I'm glad you mentioned that, because where we live and where most of my clients are, there's roughly 18,000 acres, an 18,000 acre state forest that is, just is right in the middle of where we live. Where one thing so the fire is a danger. The good thing for us versus the wine country and in California is that there's some things that we can do to manage the danger from fire, from prescribed burning, and it's pretty easy to get in and get equipment to to put fire breaks around lines and things like that. It's a little bit, it's the terrain is flat, but we have had instances where there've been, I know about 15 years ago, there was some lightning blast, and there were some pretty dicey places where people had to where fire came dangerously close to some houses. And there's never been any kind of mass destruction, the way you get with after a hurricane. But fires, to me, are much more. At least with a hurricane, you've got warning. With a fire, you can be safe one day, and within 24 hours or 12 hours, everything's gone. And hurricanes pretty much aren't like that.
Well, there's a lot of potential disaster for our viewers and listeners to think about. You mentioned the Florida State Resources for hurricane preparedness. Do you have any other books or articles that you would recommend people read to think about their risk where they live?
Jim, I don't. I'll be honest with you. They're just and I don't, and perhaps I should, but anybody, you're just because you live in California, or if you have clients all over the country, anybody can go to the website in Florida and download, and that would be a good time to do it. I'd caution my clients on, the day, a few days before Irma made landfall, their website locked up. So, you couldn't download it then. You couldn't, you couldn't create a PDF file. So you can Google Florida Department of Emergency Management, get a plan. It used to be getaplan.org, but they changed it to the Florida Department of Emergency Management, and you can Google those, and that's my best bet right there.
Okay, I might mention that FEMA.gov has a list of all sorts of planning items, because they cover the whole United States, and so they're going to address the earthquake, the tidal waves, tsunamis, thunderstorms, all sorts of things that might happen to people around the country. And of course, everybody depends on the government in these disasters, but people have to be self-prepared, and that's why we were visiting with you today. Any final thoughts for our viewers?
I always think of something right at the last minute, but AIG does have a very comprehensive 12-page. It's geared probably more towards luxury homes. It's part of one of their, it's about a 12-page PDF that is quite extensive as far as things that you can do. And it deals with a lot of primarily, high-end homes. It's part of their high-end, luxury homes. That's the word I'm looking for.
Well, that's a good reminder that people ought to have an updated household goods inventory too.
Mm-hmm. And with video cameras now, I remember back in 15 years ago in 04 and 05, when we were having all the storms. I went around with a disposable camera and took pictures of everything in my house. But now with ubiquitous smartphones, you can video everything inside your home, and that's a really good tip that people ought to do, just to verify what they have.
Well, that's what end of year planning is all about, Buzz. It's getting ready for things before they happen. And also, that's one of the benefits of a comprehensive financial plan, where planners like you and I look at people's coverage for their home, their cars, their life. And so that's another thing people ought to think about, be planning ahead for next year to make sure you get that financial checkup. Well, Buzz, thank you for visiting with us today. We really appreciate it. We've been speaking with Buz Livingston from Livingston Financial. And what little town are you located in?
Well, actually, it's Blue Mountain Beach, Florida. I have the only financial planning firm in the entire world that's headquartered in Blue Mountain Beach, Florida. So,
that's outstanding. And I noticed, since we're friends on Facebook, you put a lot of sunrise, sunset photos in there just to make sure we don't forget where you live.
Well, it's nice sometimes. I don't do it all the time, but I mean, it is kind of nice. It's my exercise.
Buzz, thank you for visiting with us today. And
You're welcome.
listeners and viewers for visiting Main Street's Swim with Jim. I want to wish everybody a wonderful holiday season, and don't forget to plan ahead.